All right, everybody, we are kicking off the first part of our study of ancient Greece. This unit is going to talk about the early Greeks, and then later notes will get into Greek mythology. And the group we're going to focus on today is called the Minoans. So, the Minoan civilization began around 2800 BCE. So, while, Hammurabi is doing his thing in Mesopotamia, and the Egyptians are doing their thing in Egypt, there's a group on the island of Crete that started a civilization called the Minoans. And let me show you where Crete is. So here's our map of the world. So if I shift over here, here's the Mesopotamians, here's the Egyptians, we got the Phoenicians and Hebrews, we got the Persians. Later on, as you know, Assyrians and Chaldeans develop. Well, the Minoans are on this island right here called Crete. So this is where they come from. And you might not know this about Greece. So this is the mainland of Greece, and all of these islands here, well, not all of them. Some of them belong to Turkey, actually. But most of these islands over here belong to Greece, including this big old island called Crete. So that's where the Minoans were. The Minoans sometimes are called Cretans. I tend not to call them Cretans because in English, Cretan is the name for a monster, and they're not monsters. The Minoans grew wheat, barley, grapes, and olives, and they had a huge surplus. Surplus means extra. So they have a huge surplus of olives, and they trade them for things that they don't have. And that's how trade, as you know, in the ancient world works. What you have extra of, what you have a surplus of, you trade for things you don't have. Now, there were lots of forests on Crete, so the Minoans are also really good carpenters, a skill that you need if you live on an island like the Minoans do. They also learned how to create things with metal. Carpenter skills, that's working with wood, combined with metalworking skills means that they are really good at building ships. So, if you are good at building ships, that means you're going to travel, and this enables the Minoans to trade and not just farm. Now, there's a problem in ancient times, and that is pirates. So pirates are real. However, they are not what you stereotypically think of as a pirate. If you're thinking of a pirate from the Pirates of the Caribbean, or you think of a pirate from movies that have an eye patch and a hat and a parrot and all right, I'm going to tell some really bad pirate jokes now. That's not the pirates of ancient times. So, what's a pirate's favorite letter? All right, so the correct answer is R. And here's a follow-up joke to that. What's a pirate's second favorite letter? I. So there you go. There's some pirate humor. So right now, I'm sure some of you are cracking up and some of you are rolling your eyes at me, or some of you are doing both. But whatever, it's fun. So that's not these pirates. That image of pirates is taken from a book that you may have written, or may have heard, or may have written. You didn't write it. May have read, or may have heard of, called Treasure Island. That's not these pirates. Pirates in ancient times basically come onto your boat and steal your stuff. So they were attacking Minoan ships in the Mediterranean Sea, so the Minoans invent a way to stop the pirates. So step one is they make their ships go faster by making them slimmer and adding 2 or 3 sails instead of 1. Therefore, you can move faster with more sails. They also built a deck to protect the rowers, and I'm going to show you a picture of all this in a second. And then they added a beam in the front called a prow that could, basically, they could smash holes into enemy ships without damaging their own ships. And let me show you a picture of that. So here is our ancient Minoan ship. So obviously you can't see this, but sails would go up here. This is the deck to protect the rowers. So do you see these holes right here? So underneath the deck would be where the rowers are, and you would stick your oar through the holes. So then, and you might be thinking like, well, why do I need to row if I'm sailing? Well, rowing is what steers the ship as well. And if you really want to get out somewhere faster, you're going to row and sail. So this enabled the Minoans to row their boat without any rowers getting killed in a pirate attack, because the pirates' main weapon is archers. If you're thinking like cannonballs, again, that's like the stereotypical later pirates in movies and stuff. Ancient pirates, obviously, gunpowder guns don't exist, so no cannonballs. So the Minoan ship could still move when under pirate attack. Also, the deck protects some of this. And then this is the prow. So what it could do is it could be, the ship could be going really fast and it could ram into a pirate ship, bust a hole in the pirate ship, causing them to sink, and it wouldn't damage the Minoan ship at all because it's just this metal part. It's not injuring the wood part. So Minoans, pretty smart with this pirate protection plan. There you go. All right. Over time, the Mediterranean becomes safer. The Minoans traveled and traded with lots of different civilizations, and their most popular products are pottery, armor, and jewelry. The Minoans were really good at making pottery, and you'll learn a little more about that later on in the notes. All right. So, Minoans lived on an island, so their attire is a little different from the other ancient groups. It's more islandy, like almost I almost want to say like almost Hawaiian style kind of thing. Minoan men would a lot of times wear shorts and robes with flower designs, almost like a Hawaiian shirt. Women as well wore flower designs on their skirts or like lacy jackets. Both men and women wore jewelry on the island. Most Minoan men farmed and fished. In addition, the Minoans had cattle, sheep, and goats. The women had to cook the meal, but they are the ones that did the hunting. So the men would farm and fish. The women would go out and hunt, and then obviously make the food as well. If I'm saying that they cook the meals. Now, the Minoans are huge sports fans. They are into sports. So much so, they built the world's first arena that could hold about 500 people. And if you're wondering what an arena is, that's like where NBA and NHL teams play. So things like Madison Square Garden, the Barclays Center, Prudential Center, those are examples of arenas. Something like MetLife Stadium, where the Giants and Jets play, well, that's a stadium. That's not an arena. Arena is indoors, not open air. So the king of the Minoans, funny thing about them, the king was always granted the title King Minos, and I'll explain more in a second, had a special box seat luxury box section of the arena. So in Minoan society, when you became king, you were called King Minos. So every Minoan, and they didn't number them. It wasn't like King Minos the first, King Minos the second. It was just the same way like we call like the leader of our country the president. They called their king King Minos because Minos meant Minoans. So like king of the Minoans. So historians found all these writings about like the kings, and it's always King Minos. It's not the same King Minos. It's a title. All right. Now, a popular sport that the Minoan people would watch in the arena was boxing. Not with gloves, though, just basically watching two individuals fight. But the most popular, so boxing is popular, but the most popular sport is something called bull leaping. So what would happen is this. A Minoan team of two would try and grab the bull's horns, and when the bull raised his head to toss the Minoan, they would do a flip and land on the bull's back. They would then do another flip off of the bulls. And I'm going to show you in a picture what that is. Oh, that's not going to fly. Let's make that bigger. I don't know if that would work. Let me zoom in here. Let's just zoom in. Okay. So here's the Minoan person, and here's the bull's horns. So they would grab the bull's horns, and the bull's head would instantly go like this. So the person would land on the bull and then do a flip off of the bull. So this is to show you like step 1, step 2, step 3 of a Minoan bull leaper. It's basically kind of like a bull, like acrobatics, like gymnastics involving a bull. Sometimes I have some students ask, is it like bullfighting? Absolutely not. Bullfighting is a horrific thing because in bullfighting, and I know you don't get this from the cartoons with like the Toro and Ole and all that stuff, and the Matador. In bullfighting, they actually kill the bull. That is not the case with bull leaping. Bulls are considered very sacred in Minoan society, and bull leaping is so popular, experts believe it was done at religious ceremonies as well, which is pretty interesting. So as much as we as a civilization love sports, it's not part of our religious ceremonies. Like, I don't know any kind of like church or temple or mosque that as part of the services, they're like, okay, it's now time for the ceremonial touchdown pass. Like that doesn't happen. All right. Some of you are like, oh man, I wish it did. So Minoan cities are different from other ancient cities in two major ways. The first way a Minoan city is different is in the center of the city is a palace, not a temple. A lot of times in Mesopotamia, all these other ancient cities, the temple is in the center. Well, not in Minoan society, a palace is in the center. And the reason why that's the case is the Minoans felt that the gods are all around them, so they didn't have to put a temple of the gods in the center. The second difference is the Minoans did not have a city wall. They relied solely on their navy to fight possible enemies at sea. So if you were going to, we'll zoom in a little more, if you were going to attack the Minoans on Crete here, and if you're wondering why this says Crete, because that's how you say it in Greek, you would have to attack the ancient Minoans by sea. So the Minoans are like, we're not going to build a city wall around our cities. We're just going to have our navy patrol, because if anyone's going to attack us, they're going to attack us by sea. And if we can stop them before they get to our homeland, go us. Now, the capital city of the Minoans is a place called, so there's a bunch of different pronunciations. There are people that say it Knossos. There are people that say it Gnosis. I've even heard Knossos, although not too often. So Knossos, Gnosis, however you want to say it. That is the capital city of the Minoans. There was a huge 5-floor palace that was a government building, temple, factory, and warehouse. It was made out of stone, sun-dried brick, and wood. And let me show you a picture of what it would have looked like. So this is a artist rendition of the Palace of Knossos, or Gnosis, however you want to say it. So there you can see, pretty impressive structure. The Minoans decorated their walls with frescoes, which are watercolor murals, and the palace had bathrooms with running water and flushing toilets. Finally, some of you are like, we finally have a civilization where people can go to the bathroom in a toilet. High five for progress. However, spoiler alert, something is going to happen to the Minoans that you're going to learn about a little bit later in the notes. Then you're going to find out why toilet as a technology doesn't make it out of Crete. So you'll find out why. All right. Now, the palace had several entrances, and the hallways and rooms formed what we call a labyrinth. So, a labyrinth is like, the English definition is a maze. However, to the Minoans, the word labyrinth didn't mean maze. It meant double axe. Double axe was a logo for the Minoans. So, labyrinth meant double axe to the Minoans because there were so many double axes throughout the labyrinth. And let me show you. When I say double axe, so, here's a labyrinth. You're going to see a little more of that in a second. When I say double axe, this is what I mean. So I don't mean two axes. I mean one axe with two axe heads. So one, they felt, represents the power of Mother Earth, and I'll talk more about that in a second. And the other represents the power of King Minos. So yeah, that's what I just explained here. So one axe stood for the power of the goddess of the earth. They refer to that goddess as Mother Earth. In mythology, she's actually a Titan. Gaia is sometimes called Mother Earth. That's who the Minoans were worshiping. The other stood for the power of King Minos. Now, because the palace was home to the labyrinth, it's given this nickname, House of the Double Axe. So this is confusing. So let me explain this again. All right. So the Minoans had in the palace this maze that they called a labyrinth. But we call that a maze. We call a labyrinth a maze. But the Minoans called a labyrinth because labyrinth means double axe. And they called it double axe because there were double axes all around the labyrinth. And the axe head stood for different things, as I mentioned. And because the palace had the labyrinth, the palace is given the nickname House of the Double Axe, meaning like the place where the labyrinth is. Now, for the next part of the notes, if you want to grab a little thing of paper, you're going to get to draw a labyrinth. So, as you're doing it, if you mess up, you can just obviously pause or rewind or things like that. It's a short little how to draw a labyrinth video.
I'm going to show you how to make a labyrinth. A labyrinth is a sort of maze, but there's no choices in the path. So really it's a pathwards from the outside into the centre. And they can be used as meditations, mindfulness. Anyway, we start off with a cross in the centre of the page. And then from the cross we do 4 little extra bits here. 4 L's in different directions. Okay.
All right, let me just pause this. So if you want to draw along with the guy, you can. If you're like, no, I'd rather just watch, then you just watch the guy do it.
And you can keep all those the same length. It doesn't really matter. And then if you just put 4 dots in the corner, this is going to help you draw your labyrinth. And then all you do is you're going from one end of one piece to the other. There's an offset. So if I start in the middle and I just go over, one to the right, and then I take the next one, and I go over onto the right hand side, and then onto the dot, and I take that right round to to the start of that, and then the end of this L, take it over and round, and keep on doing it. You can see a labyrinth starting to form. So I find that creating mazes is often more fun than actually solving the maze itself. So you keep going until you've joined up all of the empty paths. And there you have it, your labyrinth.
So what the Minoans would do, so they had this labyrinth in the palace for the king, and there would be these frescoes, these watercolor paintings of the double axe all around, and it would be a place to go for a little stroll. Very peaceful kind of thing. Okay, next. So, sailors, merchants, and carpenters of the Minoans lived in houses around the palace, and then further out for them were your artisans, your skilled workers, that would make great pottery and jewelry. The type of design that the Minoans made was a design called sgraffito. So sgraffito is where we get the word graffiti, like when you make designs on something. So it involved etching figures and designs onto their pottery. So I'm going to show you an example of Minoan pottery that uses this sgraffito technique. So there you can see. This is a bowl from ancient Crete, and the design on it is something like you would see today. Like, I'm sure if you think about the dishes you use, they might have some sort of design on it. And if you're like, nope, all my dishes are just a plain color, there is no design on it. Well, think back to when you were a kid. You may have had like a SpongeBob dish or like Elmo or anything else like that. So there you go. So you get the idea of what I'm talking about. All right, next. Now, most houses on Crete were 2 floors. Your lower floors were made up of stone. The upper floors were made out of sun-dried brick. And every, decoration in the house, a lot of times they had frescoes on the walls. So they're not hanging pictures or anything. They are painting these fresco murals directly on the wall. And I will show you what that means. So this is a picture from Crete today. You're going to learn why it looks like this. But this is a fresco that has been restored. So you can see. And then I have another picture, frescoes here. Here's some more frescoes that have been restored. So it's just painted directly on the wall. And then that bull leaping picture I showed you that I had to zoom in, that's also a fresco. All right. Minoan houses were a little weird in the beginning because you entered and exited from the roof. When you left, you lowered a ladder down the side of your house. Later on, they added wooden doors and windows that were made out of parchment, which is a thin animal skin, to divide up the rooms of the house. So essentially, what I mean by like you're entering from and exiting from the roof, that's like the second floor is like ground level, and the first floor, because it's made out of stone, is like the basement level. So that's kind of why they're doing it. Now, if you're wondering like, well, couldn't someone just break in because they had a ladder there? Ancient times, like burglaries and like robbers and stuff like that, not really a thing. In fact, like that's more of a modern thing, because I'm sure if you talk to your grandparents probably grew up at a time where they never bothered to lock the door when they were home. Now, I don't know about you, but like as soon as you like shut the door, it's like instinct, like shut the door, lock it. Like, it's obviously we live in different times. So in ancient times, robberies, not really a thing. So yeah, and when I say parchment and thin animal skin, I'm not talking, not to gross you out, I'm not talking about like an animal carcass. That's disgusting and disturbing. It's like a cleaned animal skin that almost and when I say the windows are made of parchment, actually I'm going to fix this. And windows that had shades that were made out of parchment. So we're talking about blinds. Okay. Next. So, as we talked about, the ruler of Crete is a priest king called King Minos. Priest kings, you know, are not just king, but priests. And what they would do, they would make the laws. They would climb to the top of a mountain on Crete called Mount Juctus, and they would look for signs from the gods. Then they would tell the people what they thought the gods wanted them to do. Now, the Minoans had many gods and goddesses, but they considered the Titan Gaia, also known to them as Mother Earth, as the most important. And as we learn about ancient Greece, you're going to learn that pretty much what happens is every city and area has a favorite god or goddess. That doesn't mean they don't like the other gods and goddesses. They just like one the best, and maybe they give them a little more attention. It's almost like having like a favorite food, right? So favorite food, like maybe you want the most. So you're gonna like if you had to like a choice, you would be like, oh, I'd always want this food. But that doesn't mean that you hate every other food. That just means that you like a food better. So to honor Gaia, the Minoans would build shrines, which are sacred places, everywhere on Crete. They also thought that the lily was a sacred flower. So a lot of times these shrines, they would plant lilies. Now, if you were wondering what happened to the toilets and why those pictures of frescoes were destroyed, the Minoan civilization gets destroyed by a horrific natural disaster. So north of Crete, there is an island called Thera. And when I'm done explaining this, I'm going to show you on the map. Today it's called the island of Santorini. And a massive volcanic eruption occurred there. And all of the ash and smoke went directly to Crete. It also caused a massive tsunami that destroyed much of Minoan life. Very few Minoans survived. In fact, the only Minoans that survived are the ones that were not on Crete at the time, that were, on boats, let's say, in different parts of the ancient world trading for different things. So let me show you. So let's zoom in on, where is Santorini actually? There's so many of these little islands. Actually, I'm going to, here's Santorini. So, as you can see, like Archaeological Museum of Thera was the name for it in ancient times. Today it's called Santorini. So here is the island of Santorini. So what happened is this massive volcano exploded, obviously killing everyone. Here's Santorini, killing everyone on Thera. What does it say, Santorini? And all the clouds and ash and destruction rained down onto Crete here. And then a massive tsunami hits Crete and just wipes out everyone that was living there. Now, the people on the Greek mainland, they had no idea what was going on. They weren't affected by this. And remember, the ancient Greeks didn't know the science behind this. They thought the gods must have done something. The Minoans must have really angered the gods. Now, the Mycenaeans were a group that lived on the mainland of Greece. We're going to learn about them in the next unit. And if you can see here, look, Mycenaeans. They traded off with the Minoans, and the Mycenaeans are like, we haven't seen a lot of Minoan ships come around anymore. So the Mycenaeans went to Crete and they saw Crete utterly destroyed. So then the Mycenaeans, let me go back to that. So the Mycenaeans are from here. Mycenae is actually right over here. So they take over Crete, because the Minoans are gone. And they don't take it over as like, we now control this horrible wasteland. They slowly start to rebuild it because to them, it is important like seaport. Well, the Mycenaeans had no idea what happened to the Minoans. As I said, they thought, the gods must have done this. So rumors and tales start to be spread about what happened, and it creates this story that is called Theseus and the Minotaur. And you're going to learn that story. Some of you might know this myth already. You're going to learn this myth later on in this unit. Now, this is why the toilets go away. If some of you are like, but what about the toilets? This is why the toilets go away. The toilets were only at the palace, right? It was only where the king could get it, and the architects of the toilets were killed in this massive disaster, and it was done before like it could spread to other civilizations. So that's why toilets don't become a thing for thousands and thousands of years later, all because a volcano killed and destroyed like the prototype of it. All right. Now, some archaeologists even believe that the Minoans could be the ancient mythological civilization that is referred to as Atlantis. So Atlantis in Greek mythology is a civilization that was described but never found, that had to do with like this group of sea people that just mysteriously disappeared. Well, the Minoans definitely, when I say sea people, I don't mean like mermaids and stuff like that. No, people like of the sea, like travelers. So archaeologists think the Minoans, could have been what ancient myths refer to as Atlantis as well. Now, interesting little side note that I didn't tell you about when we were learning ancient Egypt, and I saved it till now. At the time that Crete is being destroyed by volcano, that is the same exact time Amos is leading the rebellion in Egypt against the Hyksos. So as Amos is leading this rebellion against the Hyksos, the sky turns dark and ash and debris starts falling onto Egypt. It wasn't enough to do any damage, but it freaks the Hyksos out, who thought that maybe the Egyptian gods, like Horus and Ra, are doing something to kick them out, and this leads to the Hyksos fleeing. Now, I purposely didn't tell you that fact because I wanted you to learn when we learned Egypt, because I wanted you to learn about the Minoans. But this shows you how everything's happening at the same time. So the big eruption happens here, and it's so massive, some ash and debris make it all the way here to Egypt. So let me zoom out so you can see. Let's zoom out a little more. So volcano destroyed, some ash makes it here, and it's at the same time Amos is leading the rebellion, and it's one of the reasons the Hyksos are like, you know what? Peace out. We're out of here. And then Amos and the Egyptians see that as the gods have helped us get rid of the Hyksos. All right, so there you have it. Some pretty interesting stuff about the early Greeks known as the Minoans.